I never expected to be erased from my own family's history. At my father's 70th birthday, while everyone clinked glasses to toast my brother, the golden son, I discovered my name had been wiped from the will. They smiled at me like I was invisible, like my art, my dreams, meant nothing. I tried to stay calm, but something snapped that night. I knew they buried a secret, one connected to my grandfather's land. If they thought I'd quietly disappear, they underestimated me. What they didn't know? That land still had my name written in its bones, and I was coming to claim it. The letter came folded in crisp parchment, sealed with my grandfather's insignia, a bronze raven pressed into red wax. I found it tucked inside an old sketchbook he'd given me when I was 15, the one I hadn't opened in years. I had come home for my father's 70th birthday celebration, and somehow the universe decided to throw me a bone, or a bomb. I unfolded the letter on the balcony outside the ballroom, hands trembling as I read the first line. If this reaches you, Alyssa, it means I failed to protect what should have always been yours. I didn't get further than that before someone called my name. Alyssa! My mother's voice sliced through the evening air like glass. Come inside. Don't embarrass us by disappearing during the toast. I slid the letter into my purse, barely breathing. Inside, the room glittered with opulence. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids draping from golden arches, a string quartet playing something pretentious in the corner. Everyone dressed like they were starring in a period drama. Everyone, except me. I wore a flowing emerald green dress I designed myself. Too bold, too artistic, too Alyssa. My mother's eyes flicked over me disapprovingly as I entered. Her lips curled. Always so colorful, she muttered, as if it were a disease. My brother, Nathan, stood center stage, surrounded by clapping hands and champagne flutes. My father's arm rested proudly on his shoulder. This family's future lies in strong hands, he declared, voice booming through the speakers. Nathan has proven himself worthy of carrying on our legacy. I stood off to the side, alone, my presence unacknowledged. No one mentioned my name. Not once. It had always been this way. When I was 8, I painted a mural of our farm's horses across the side of the barn. I remember how proud I felt until Dad ordered it painted over, said it made us look unserious. At 12, I won a national art contest. They didn't even frame the certificate. But when Nathan made the local paper for graduating business school with a 3.00 GPA, they laminated it, framed it, and hung it beside the family portrait in the hallway. That portrait still hung there tonight, crooked as ever. No one ever straightened it, just like no one ever fixed the way I was cut out of the family's narrative. After dinner, I slipped into my father's office. I needed air and quiet. My curiosity, or maybe my self-destructive streak, pushed me to open the mahogany cabinet where he kept important documents. What I found was the latest version of the will. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. My name was missing. I scanned the page again. It listed Nathan, my father, even distant cousins. But not me. Not a single mention. I stumbled back, heart pounding. Why? What changed? When? I was still reeling when my mother entered. She didn't even ask what I was doing. Just smiled like she'd caught a pet misbehaving. We had to make some hard choices, she said calmly. You're not exactly stable, darling. You need to focus on your art, not stress about land and business. Not stable? I asked. What are you talking about? Her response was to cross the room, open my suitcase on the armchair, and gently place a small white bottle inside. It's a mild antidepressant, she said. Just something to take the edge off. You've been so emotional lately. I couldn't speak. My voice curled up and died in my throat. She hugged me, cold and perfunctory. We still love you, sweetie. Just not in the same way we love Nathan. You understand? No, I didn't. And I wouldn't. The next morning, as guests mingled on the lawn, I caught the tail end of a conversation between my uncle and Nathan. She still doesn't know, huh? My uncle said, chuckling. Good. Best keep it that way. She was never meant for all this. That night, I returned to the balcony with the letter. I finished reading it. My dear Alyssa, It continued. They will try to erase you, but remember, the land holds memory deeper than blood. Buried beneath the willow tree is the true deed, sealed and signed. It is yours. You are the artist of this legacy, even if they've forgotten. I dropped the letter. My grandfather, he tried. He knew. He saw me. And they buried it all. Not just the deed, the truth, my worth, my place. And now I had the chance to unearth it. It started with the coffee mug. One morning, I came downstairs to find my father already seated at the kitchen table reading the paper. My mother stood by the stove, humming tunelessly, pouring coffee into 2 cups, one for herself, one for him. She didn't look up when I entered. I reached for the 3rd mug in the cupboard, the one with the chipped rim and the faded paintbrush logo I had designed in college. My hand froze. It was gone. I threw that old thing out, she said casually. It looked unstable, just like you lately. I didn't respond. I poured myself coffee into a plain white cup and sat down, trying to focus on the sound of birds outside. But the tension at the table crackled like electricity. Then, my father sighed and folded the newspaper. You've always made things harder than they needed to be, he said without looking at me. I didn't realize having opinions qualified as making things harder, I replied. He lowered the paper slowly. Because of you. Because of the choices you made, your mother's blood pressure went through the roof. You think you're the only one suffering? My heart dropped. Excuse me? He leaned forward, face tight. Because of you, your mother... He stopped himself, then glanced at her. She turned away, pretending to stir eggs that didn't exist. I pushed back my chair and stood. Finish the sentence, Dad. Because of me. What? He didn't, but the damage was done. That morning cracked something open in me, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. Later that day, I walked into the art room my grandfather had built for me in the East Wing. It smelled like cedar and old oil paint. I pulled out a fresh canvas, dipped my brush in crimson, and began to paint. The image poured out of me like a scream. A tree, roots gnarled in tangled knots, its trunk composed of twisting bodies, screaming mouths in the bark, and at the center, one figure, faceless, arms reaching upward, drowning in the branches above. I titled it, Bloodline Rooted. That night, Nathan wandered in as I cleaned my brushes. He looked at the painting and burst out laughing. Jesus, Alyssa, what is this? Some emo horror therapy? I said nothing. He smirked and walked away, muttering, No wonder no gallery will take you seriously. What he didn't know was that the painting would one day speak louder than any will. 2 days later, I caught sight of a thick folder left on the hallway table, marked with legal stamps and tabs. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't dropped my phone and crouched to retrieve it. The label read, Temporary Conservatorship Filing, Alyssa G. Whitmore. I froze. Conservatorship? That was for people unfit to handle their affairs. My breath caught. I rifled through it quickly. Forms, doctor assessments, all unsigned but prepared. A note paper-clipped on top read, Waiting on confirmation from Dr. Bennett before proceeding. Dr. Bennett was my childhood psychiatrist. They were building a case against me. I backed away, the hallway spinning around me. They weren't just cutting me out. They were erasing my right to be. That night, I snuck into the attic, searching for something I wasn't sure existed. My hands brushed past dusty boxes, old photographs, brittle books. Then I found it, a leather-bound notebook wrapped in twine. My grandfather's handwriting filled the first page. I fear the legacy I leave behind will rot before it blooms, it read. They do not see her, but she is the only one who ever looked at the land and saw more than profit. Alyssa sees soul. She must inherit it, not because she is blood, but because she understands. I sat in the dark and cried, notebook pressed to my chest. Was this what he had been trying to tell me? That the land was always meant for me? The next day, I drove into town under the pretense of buying supplies. But really, I needed answers. I found Henry, the caretaker who had worked for my grandfather for over 30 years. His hands shook with age, but his eyes were sharp. He hesitated when I asked him about the will. Your granddad didn't trust the family lawyers, he said quietly. He hired someone private, a man named Calvin Doyle, sent the signed deed and will straight to him, said he'd send you a copy after, you know. But I never got it, I said. Henry's gaze darkened. You wouldn't have. Calvin died. Car crash, about 10 years ago. Strange thing, too. No skid marks, just drove off the road. I felt my spine go cold. So the original will... gone, he said. Unless someone kept a copy. A will lost, a land buried, a death too convenient. Something was wrong. Deeply, intentionally wrong. And someone in my family had made sure I'd never find out. I first saw the sign while driving home from the pharmacy. Future side of Willow Rise Spa and Resort. It read, bold letters over a sleek digital rendering of glass villas, infinity pools, and golf carts. The sign was staked on the very soil my grandfather had once walked barefoot every morning with his coffee in hand. Our land. The land he said he would leave to me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a misprint. Or maybe the company had bought the land adjacent to ours. But when I pulled over and stepped out of the car, my boots crunching on gravel, I felt the old willow tree's shadow cross my face. No, this was our land. My land. The land they swore was still in probate. The air turned electric in my lungs. I snapped a photo of the sign, my fingers shaking, and searched the company name online, a subsidiary of ClearPath Holdings. I clicked on the leadership tab and stopped breathing. Chief Operations Officer, Lucas Reed. Lucas, my best friend in college, my first roommate. The only person who'd ever seen every version of me. Broke, brilliant, heartbroken. We used to paint on the same canvas, fight about brush strokes, cry over deadlines. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 8 years, but I remembered his voice like a ghost. You don't need the world to see you, Liz. You just need to see yourself. I called him that night. He picked up after 3 rings. Wow, he said. I was wondering how long it would take. How long for what? I asked, voice icy. For you to find out, he said. No apology, no guilt. We agreed to meet the next morning at his office. When I walked in, he looked the same. Older, richer, but with the same ocean blue eyes that used to light up at 3 a.m. when we discovered something new in our art. He gestured for me to sit. You're angry, he said. I get that. But you signed it. Signed what? He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and slid a document across the table. It was a contract. My name at the top. My signature at the bottom. Date, June 5th, my 18th birthday. It was a generic agreement, something I barely remembered. Lucas and I had once talked about starting an art commune on my family's land. We drafted something symbolic, amateurish, never meant for real use. This was never binding, I snapped. It wasn't notarized. We were kids. He leaned back, arms crossed. Your parents found it in your college things. They used it to open negotiations. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind. They said you'd gone unstable, that you didn't want anything to do with the land anymore. My mouth dried out. You believed them? Lucas looked away. They were convincing. And you disappeared from everyone's life. I stood up. You were supposed to know me better than anyone. I thought I did, he said, but people change. So did loyalty, apparently. I left the office in a fog. My heart beat out of sync with reality. I barely made it to my car before the world collapsed inward. 2 days later, I woke up in a hospital bed, the ceiling above me pale and pulsing. Machines beeped softly at my side. A nurse hovered nearby, and when I stirred, she pressed a cool hand to my forehead. You're safe, she whispered. You had a panic collapse. Dehydration, exhaustion, anxiety spike. My body felt like stone, my thoughts like fog. They kept me for 72 hours. During that time, no one from my family visited, but on the second day, Lucas came. He didn't speak much, just placed a small notebook on the tray beside me. I found this in the back of a locked drawer in my old studio, he said. I think it's yours now. Then he left. I waited until night to open it. The pages smelled of turpentine and thyme. It was my grandfather's handwriting again. The first page read, "If you are reading this, then I have failed. I tried to protect you with my name, with the land, with love. But legacy is a fragile thing when held by selfish hands." The next pages were drawings, sketches of me as a child, painting in the fields, talking to animals, staring into the sky like it held answers. And below one of them, written in bold charcoal strokes, "She is the only one who sees what others cannot. If they bury her, they bury beauty. If they erase her, they erase the soul of this place." Tears fell onto the page. He had seen me, the way I wanted to be seen, the way no one else ever had. He'd left his heart in this notebook, and they buried it with everything else. The first thing I did after leaving the hospital was buy a corkboard, not a small one, but a massive grid that covered half the guest room wall. I thumbtacked photos, dates, receipts, printouts of texts and emails, scribbled notes in red ink across overlapping timelines. Every insult disguised as concern, every manipulation cloaked in tradition, every moment I'd gaslit myself into believing they loved me in their own way. The board looked like a murder investigation. In a way, it was. The slow, calculated assassination of my self-worth. A photo of me at 7, holding up a watercolor of our dog. My mother's handwriting scrawled on the back, "Alyssa made a mess again." A program from my first solo art exhibit in Chicago, unacknowledged by any family member. Screenshots of texts. "Are you taking your meds? We're worried. You're acting unstable again." I stood back, arms crossed, and took it all in. The truth burned, but it burned clean. I wasn't broken. I was bruised into silence, but not anymore. The next day, I opened the notebook again, flipping through my grandfather's sketches. Between pages, a folded envelope had been tucked, yellowed with time. Inside was a newspaper clipping from 1979, announcing my parents' engagement. The article praised the union as a merging of two powerful local families, my father's real estate empire, my mother's lineage of politicians. Below the headline, "Arranged through the patriarch of the Whitmore estate." I blinked. Arranged? I turned to the back of the article where someone had scribbled in pencil, "She never forgave him." Later that week, while packing up the attic, I found a series of letters, unopened, unsent, written by my mother to a woman named Eliza. One read, "He told me I had no choice, that marrying Charles would save the family. I didn't even cry, just felt cold. And now, there's a child who looks like the life I almost lived. Alyssa doesn't even know she reminds me of everything I lost." It made sense now. Her distaste wasn't born of confusion. It was projection. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the reflection she couldn't bear. My mother never hated me. She hated her past, and I wore it on my face. That night, I opened a new canvas. I painted my mother's portrait, young, full of fire, standing at a crossroads. In the background, two paths. One led to a field of wildflowers, the other to a stone mansion. She was looking at the flowers. I titled it, "The Choice She Never Had." And then I painted more. A series of 10, each capturing a warped memory from my childhood. I called the series Buried Memory, each piece framed in black, the edges burnt slightly for effect. A family vacation where I was cropped out of the photo. A Christmas dinner where my seat was moved last minute, my father looking over Nathan's homework while mine lay untouched. But in each painting, there was always a version of me, sometimes small, sometimes distorted, watching from a corner, unseen but present. When I shared them online, I didn't use my full name, just a caption. "When family forgets who you are, art remembers." The post exploded, thousands of shares, comments flooded in. This feels like my story. I've never seen pain painted so beautifully. I didn't know how to explain it to my therapist until now. People from around the world saw me, and through that, they saw themselves. For the first time, my art wasn't just survival. It was connection. 2 days later, I received an email from a woman named Meredith Blake, CEO of Highland Terra, a major land development firm and direct competitor of ClearPath Holdings. I've seen your work, and I've seen the resort project on Willow Rise. If you're interested in a conversation, I believe we can offer each other more than healing." We met in secret at a gallery in the city. Meredith didn't waste time. ClearPath's plan is aggressive and frankly unsustainable, but if you want that land to become something meaningful, we'll help you secure legal standing and transform it on your terms. I smiled. "What do you want in return?" She shrugged. "Justice and good PR." I agreed. In the days that followed, I began compiling legal evidence, contacting art lawyers and property rights advocates. Lucas never responded again, but I no longer needed his validation. My voice was stronger without him. Then it happened. My parents called, then texted, then emailed. "Alyssa, we'd love to talk. Can we meet, just for coffee? Please respond, sweetheart. We miss you." I knew better. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted a new piece to my growing online following, a painting of a puppet, its strings tangled, its limbs cut off, staring at a mirror. Caption: "Don't come back for me when I've already left." Within hours, another email arrived from my father's lawyer requesting a meeting. He said they wished to clear the air. They wanted to know what I was planning. I replied with a single sentence: "The game has only just begun." I uploaded the video at exactly 9 a.m. on a Monday. It began with silence. Then a soft voice, mine, narrating over slow pans of my paintings. Buried memory, the choice she never had, bloodline rooted. Between the visuals, black screens with white text told my story. I didn't name names, I didn't need to. Each image told a truth that was both personal and universal. The pain of being overlooked, the trauma of being scapegoated, the ache of watching your family celebrate your silence. Within hours, the video hit 100,000 views. By midnight, 1 million. The comments exploded. Art forums, survivor networks, even major publications began circulating the piece. Anonymous artist breaks generational silence with paint and pain. A gallery of ghosts, the visual memoir that's shaking social media. I let the story breathe. Then I released the next part. Screenshots of property records, the fake signatures, the discrepancies in the will. I never accused anyone outright. I just asked questions. Who benefits when a voice is erased? What does legacy mean when built on silence? I attached one final image. The deed to the Willow Rise land, stamped with Highland Terra's seal and my name on the contract. Not as seller, as partner. The caption read, "This land will not become a monument to greed. It will become a sanctuary for truth." Highland Terra issued a press release within the week. The land would be transformed into an open-air art sanctuary and trauma recovery center in partnership with community artists and mental health advocates. I retained co-ownership and creative direction. The media storm that followed made national news. And then came the consequences. Nathan's company, deeply tied to ClearPath Holdings, saw its stocks plummet. Whispers of embezzlement and off-book dealings emerged, triggered by the trail of forged documents I had unearthed. The SEC opened an inquiry within days. My father's firm, once considered untouchable, was dropped by 2 major partners. Rumors circulated that he'd falsified documents to secure inheritance positions, leveraging Alyssa's mental health records for court leverage. The optics were toxic. My mother attempted damage control. She gave an exclusive interview to a well-known lifestyle magazine, painting herself as a worried mother misunderstood by her artistic daughter. The article was titled, "A Mother's Pain, When Love is Misread." But the internet didn't buy it. People dug up past interviews, old social posts, comments she had made, dismissive, cold, damning in hindsight. The same day her interview dropped, an anonymous account released a recording. Her voice, clear as glass. "I don't care what she wants. We erase her. We control the narrative. I'll handle the lawyer. Money talks." It was over. Public backlash erupted. The audio was picked up by news networks. Even loyal allies distanced themselves from the Whitmore family. Small protests began outside their estate. Signs read, "Justice for Alyssa. Legacy. Shouldn't silence. Families don't erase their own." More voices came forward. Former employees, distant relatives, confirming years of exploitation, manipulation, shady land dealings. My family imploded from within. My father suffered a mild stroke brought on by stress. He retreated from the public eye completely. Nathan left town attempting to salvage what remained of his career, but the investigations followed him. My mother? She tried to hold on, to spin, to manipulate, but her image cracked like porcelain under pressure. When local authorities opened a case into her dealings with the family lawyer, especially regarding the forged medical claims, she disappeared from social media entirely. And me? I watched it all unfold quietly, not with satisfaction, but with sobering clarity. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. I never screamed, I never swung. I simply told the truth and let the world respond. In the following weeks, I returned to the land. Construction had not begun, but the team from Highland Terra had already started clearing debris, prepping foundations for the gallery structures. I stood under the willow tree where my grandfather used to sit with his sketch pad. The breeze was soft, the ground still held warmth. For the first time, it felt like mine. Later that month, I held a small exhibition in a downtown gallery titled The Reckoning. It featured new pieces, more hopeful, more open. The centerpiece was a triptych titled The Fall. 3 panels showing a porcelain mask cracking, a golden cage bending open, and finally a bird flying into flame. People cried. People thanked me. One woman said, "You painted the parts of me I never had the words for." And I smiled, because that was the point all along. Not to destroy, but to reveal. Not to wound, but to heal. By the time the final reviews were in, my work was being studied in university art programs. Psychologists reached out for collaborations. Survivors from around the world wrote letters. One even said, "You helped me confront my own mother." That was the true victory. Not their downfall. My rise. They started calling me a survivor before I felt like one. The label felt heavy at first, like I hadn't earned it, like I hadn't bled enough to deserve the honor. But survivors aren't crowned by what they endure. They're crowned by what they transform. And in the months following the collapse of my family's legacy, I transformed everything. The land became the Phoenix Gallery. What once was meant to be another soulless resort now rose from the soil as a sanctuary of truth. Highland Terra funded the construction, but I shaped it, literally. Every beam, every wall, every garden path was designed with intention. Open-air exhibits flowed into shaded spaces for reflection. The willow tree remained at the center, untouched, surrounded by benches shaped like open arms. I curated the first exhibition myself, Roots and Ashes. It wasn't just mine. Artists from around the world submitted pieces. Survivors of domestic trauma, parental neglect, generational abuse, sculptures made from broken furniture, photographs of shadows, paintings done by trembling hands, and people came. At first, just locals, then tourists, then busloads of students, counselors, and families. They wandered through the space slowly, reverently, like it was a temple. A little boy, maybe 8 years old, approached me one afternoon. His foster mother stood nearby, watching nervously. He tugged my sleeve and pointed at a painting I had titled, "The Wall That Didn't Break." "That one," he whispered. "It feels like my chest when I miss my mom." I knelt beside him. "Art can say what our mouths forget how to." He nodded solemnly. "You paint like I feel." That moment was worth every scar. Within a year, I was invited to speak at conferences. The survivor artist movement became a term in articles, podcasts, journals. But I made sure it never became about fame. Every interview, I redirected the spotlight toward the art, toward the people who created despite pain, not because of it. One of my proudest creations came later. Hearthlight Academy, a nonprofit art school built beside the Phoenix Gallery. It offered full scholarships to children and young adults estranged from their families. Some were runaway teens, some were former foster kids, some were just like me, emotionally orphaned by people who couldn't accept them for who they were. We didn't teach perfection. We taught expression, truth, healing through creation. We didn't require test scores. We required heart. The walls were covered with student art, messy, raw, beautiful. We held exhibitions every month. One girl painted a mirror, shattered down the center. She titled it Dad's Voice. When she unveiled it, the room fell silent, and then they clapped. That's how healing happens, not through erasure, but through echoes. The notebook my grandfather left me, his sketches, his words, was eventually published. I titled it Legacy in Charcoal. It wasn't just a tribute to him, it was a blueprint for what it means to leave something behind that matters. The book became a bestseller. University professors assigned it, artists quoted it. Survivors underlined entire pages and wrote, "This is my family too." And somewhere in all of this, between curating trauma and creating safe spaces, I found her. A social worker reached out about a girl named Lila, 10 years old, quiet, withdrawn. She had been in and out of group homes, her mother in prison for abuse, her father unknown. No relatives claimed her. "She's different," the caseworker said. "She draws instead of talking." When Lila came to visit, she didn't speak for the first 2 hours. Just walked the gallery, sketchpad in hand, eyes wide. She stopped in front of the choice she never had, my portrait of my mother. After a long while, she looked up at me. "She looks like she wants to scream." I nodded. "She does." Lila blinked. "I do too, but when I draw, it gets quiet." I knew, right then. Within weeks, the adoption was finalized. Lila became my daughter. She painted every day, some of it dark, most of it strange, all of it brilliant. I gave her space, and she gave me trust. Together, we built new rituals. Mornings with cocoa and sketchbooks. Afternoons planting wildflowers around the willow. Nights reading books where no one got left behind. One spring evening, we held a new exhibit called Home Reimagined. Every piece came from Hearthlight students, family, chosen not assigned, roots grown in defiance. At the center of the room stood my newest painting, unfinished until that very day. It depicted a circle of people of all ages, holding hands under a canopy of stars. Each figure glowed faintly, lines blending into one another, no single person the center, just a shared warmth. I called it Real Family. Lila stood beside me, holding my hand as people filed in. She looked up and whispered, "Are you happy now?" I smiled. "Yes." "Because I didn't just survive, Lila, I became." And we stood there together surrounded by light.